All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Wednesday, October 8th, here on your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns. I'm Tanner Carlson. That is Jake Jimerson. This is All in Horns, presented to you by Rogue Sports Network. And Jake, I would like to say, after a few days of letting things kind of simmer and marinate from the week that Texas has come off of with the loss against Florida, things have not gotten any better in terms of the chaos panic button being hit nationwide, regionally wide, locally, fan base. Just, I'm talking top of the Titanic, no life vest, just jumping for nothing. And it has gotten to a point to where I can't really even engage in social media or internet activities based on people commenting, people's opinions, people's thoughts. We have a podcast and we get people commenting on our videos that are just idiots, for a lack of a better word for the word I want to say. I can't say it. But yeah, dude, it's gotten real bad. It's gotten to a point now where Aggie fans, Sooner fans, and Longhorn fans are banding together in unity. And so it has gotten out of hand. If you don't know what I'm talking about, the New York Times they released an article essentially, and I'll read the headline to you, unless Jake, you have it already pulled up.
I do not. I've looked at it enough today. I would rather you read it than me have to look at it again, to be honest.
And the New York Times posted from The Athletic: many people are having a bad year in college football, but Arch Manning is having one of the worst. The quarterback has gone from preseason Heisman Trophy favorite and projected number one NFL draft pick to a man synonymous with failure. And then the headline of the article is Arch Manning, college football's first flop. If you go into the comment section underneath that post, you'll see Sooner fans and Aggie fans saying, this seems a bit much. I think synonymous with failure is a little too harsh. A lot of fans, a lot of just college football fans have put in 7 games as their comment. 7 games. That's all he's played in his college career. And yeah, he does have a lot to develop, but synonymous with failure and the first college football flop. Jay, we've never had a 5-star in college football that didn't turn out to be that great. This is the first
definitely
one.
never won on commercials, DJU.
Never. It's never happened.
I mean, it's so bad that you have Travis Davidson, an OU insider, going, this is so unfair. New York Times reeks. You have Steve Wiltfong, who's the national on-3 rivals guy, just talking about what a joke it is and going, I guess they didn't remember Jackson Dart's first season, Joe Burrows, and so many others. Sometimes it takes time for guys when they do become a starter.
By the way, where did Cam Newton start?
Blinn, right?
He started at Florida, then he had to go to Blinn, and then he came to Auburn. Yeah, he didn't have just this right out of the gate as soon as I was recruited. One of the best one of the best college football players to ever exist. It takes times for a lot of players. And that's just, Jake, that's just the quarterback position. We don't even need to get into the weeds of running back and wide receivers and things like that.
Well, and what's happening is people are getting their hands on the All-22 film, and they're all going, Arch played pretty good when you consider everything that was going on around him. They're like, they should have scored way less than 21 points. I mean, other than the fact you could look at the 2 open touchdowns they missed. One was Arch. He got hit when he was throwing it, believe it or not. And then the other was Ryan Wingo missing the pass on a double pass. That was schemed up perfectly. But
also, with that throw, I understand, Ryan Wingo, you're a wide receiver. I get it. But, dude,
he was so open that the one thing you can't do is overthrow it. He was way too
insanity. And Ryan Wingo didn't even get hit on that throw. That was just a clean
throw.
It
was schemed and executed perfectly other than the throw.
And that's
But
crazy to miss that badly. I don't care if you're a wide receiver or not. I think I could have gotten it to Andres in time.
no, because there was no one close. He could have underthrown it by a lot, and it would have been a touchdown, or at worst, a huge play.
Yeah. Sorry.
It was like I was telling you before we started recording. Texas at worst should have had 35 points. And I think a lot of people are losing that, which would have barely been a win, by the way, because I guess the defense just gets off scot-free despite sucking that entire game.
Yeah.
I mean, the offense was very limited in amount of possessions they got, especially in the first half, because the defense got bullied by a Florida team that hadn't been able to remotely bully anyone. But I digress. Back to the point at hand. Arch showed a ton of development to me from week 1 to the game in Florida, as far as when it comes to road starts and how he looked. If he played like he did at Florida, at Ohio State, especially considering the pass protection was much better against Ohio State, they win that game handedly, mind you. When you consider the throws he missed, what was available there, and I think Sark would have been more confident in him because he probably doesn't miss that opening throw because we've seen him hit those out routes consistently now. I think it's one of the harder throws to make in football, and Arch has been consistently making it the last several weeks outside of UTEP, where it's a very long throw that really only gets you 10 to 15 yards, and he is just making those throws on the money to the outside shoulder. So Arch has shown a ton of development. He really didn't play that bad against Florida. The 2 picks is the one thing you would look at there and go, and then a couple plays here and there. But the 2 picks happened in the fourth quarter when they were pressing. Were they bad? Should they not have happened? Sure. But he's showing development, and I cannot wait.
It's a young quarterback pressing the issue. But
I cannot wait because it may not happen this year, by the way. This may be a long game that we have to wait for it to pay off. How stupid, ignorant, and idiotic all these people in the New York Times and all these Texas fans in the comments are going to look after Arch has had time to develop, and as long as he sticks with the Longhorn program next year, which I couldn't blame anyone for wanting to leave with how ridiculous things are, but as long as he sticks with the program, which I think he will, and I think he will be, because I think the coaching staff, especially Sarkisian, will learn their lesson from this year that you can't be overly loyal to guys just because you recruited them.
Yep.
It is a cutthroat game in college football, and players are getting paid now. So forget about loyalty. If you're concerned about a position group, you go out and you get someone better. Because
here's my favorite thing about what Sark did whenever he was building this program to where it is today, is that loyalty wasn't there because they weren't necessarily his guys, but he accumulated talent no matter where it came from. He could have had 3 starting quarterbacks. There were people like, okay, do we really need this many wide receivers? Yeah, you need all the talent you can get. There is no such thing as too much talent on a football team.
I remember seeing people say, why'd you take Matthew Golden?
Yeah.
And then because you got Isaiah Bond, why'd you take Golden too? That seems like a waste of NIL.
Why? When you already have Jonathan Brooks, why are you recruiting CJ Baxter? Because you can never have too much talent, period. You will not have too much talent on a football team. It doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter if you hurt somebody's feelings, because guess what? Competition is good for all of these guys. Them being on edge a little bit of, if I don't step up my game and play my absolute ass off, then I'm going to get replaced by the guy behind me. And same for that guy, and same for that guy. And then you create this culture. And this year feels like we lost a little bit of that edge because it felt like guys had already earned their spots going into the offseason, and there wasn't that competition at certain spots because guys were loyal to guys that were already there within the program, that they've been
loyal
developing,
to a coach,
or loyal to a coach, and took them for their word whenever you probably knew you probably had some holes that you needed to fill, but you took their word for it because they told you, no, these guys are ready to go. They're good to go. And you just went with that. And now it's too late. College football is not the NFL. You cannot dive back into free agency and go grab somebody. You can't go make a trade mid-season to try to turn your team around. Your roster's your roster at this point, which is a point that you made in yesterday's episode, Jake, of saying it's probably not going to be this year. Your turnaround isn't this year. Your turnaround is in the offseason.
No, I mean your hope right now is to end 9-3 and give yourself a chance at making the playoffs, and that is a far-fetched idea. Not the making the playoffs at 9-3, but ending 9-3 when you still have games against Vanderbilt, an improved Mississippi State team, OU this weekend, a A&M team that appears to be rolling, and Georgia.
I mean, your hope is to actually end the season with 2 losses. I'm just saying that's if you're talking coaching staff and player wise.
Yeah, the coaching staff and player wise, I can't imagine them ending with 3 losses, really, to be honest with you right now, because my thing is Sark can scheme great the rest of the year, and I don't think it would matter because the offensive line is a deficiency, which is Sarkisian's fault at the end of the day. Sarkisian and Flood's fault. And I think I think Texas just they had so much success the last couple of years. I think they just kind of trusted that what they had in the program was good. They got the D tackles and were conservative in other areas. And I think Sarkisian and company learned a really tough lesson this year. And I think it's a lesson that's going to cost them this season when it comes to competing for a national championship standpoint, which is what all this fan base and all this coaching staff cares about at this point, because that is the next step. They've been to the semifinal 2 years in a row. But at the same time, the hate can get out of hand, and the hate's getting really out of hand with Arch Manning specifically. But even just towards I just see it's like PTSD from Texas fans showing out, and it's just like, oh, we're back to being a bad program. It's like, it doesn't mean this program's bad. But then again, I guess Florida State fans said the same thing last year, and now they're much better. But
it means this season isn't going according to plan, but it doesn't mean the program is in shambles. There's a big difference of where the program was under Charlie Strong and Tom Herman and where the program is currently. You can have bad seasons mixed in with a very consistent and very good program. And again, here's another soapbox, is that Nick Saban ruined what success looks like at college football. Nick Saban ruined what our image of success is at the college football ranks. Same with Tom Brady. Tom Brady and Bill Belichick at the pro level have that same effect of, that's not common. That's going to happen once in our entire life. Like, you're not going to get just a dominant stretch of nearly 10 to 15 years of success and winning seasons and being in the playoffs and competing for national championships each and every single one of those years. You're going to have down years. Look at LSU. I think LSU is the perfect example of what longevity of success looks like. And guess what? They've gone through about 4 coaches within that span. And those 4 coaches, well, 3 of them have won national championships. So it's like, you can get a Nick Saban to leave LSU. You can rebuild with the Mad Hatter. What was his name? I always forget his name. But Les Miles comes in, wins a national championship, and then you move on from him because things start to tail off. You hire Ed Ogeron, takes a little bit of a rebuild. You put together one of the greatest college football teams to ever exist, win a national championship. 2 years later, they're losing 5 games in a season, and they can him. It happens, and I'm not saying that that's where Texas needs to be in terms of getting rid of coaches, because I want Sarkisian to be here lifetime. But I do think that that's what your normal success is probably going to emulate more so than 20 straight 11-win seasons competing for national championships.
Well, in the NIL era, it's becoming even less often for there to be repeat success. Texas, mind you, Texas was the only team to make the last 2 playoffs. I mean, from the 14 playoff to the 12, none of those 4 teams other than Texas made the next playoff. Now, we'll see repeat people in the playoffs during the 12-team era, and I think Texas will be one of those teams who repeats plenty of times in the future. But Texas had the sustained success the last couple years. This year, I think they bet too heavily on some of their guys. I think Sarkisian trusted Flood too much, rather than maybe trusting what maybe his instincts were telling him, at least based off reports that I've read and rumors that I've read. And I think it's come back to kind of bite him in the ass. And I think it's a lesson he'll learn. If there's one thing Sarkisian does as a coach, he does learn from lessons. When it comes to program building and building out rosters. And I think he just got burned this year. And the unfortunate thing is, it's not something they can. This offensive line is not fixable in season. Can they get better in season? Yeah. But are they going to be good enough to compete for a national title or compete to make a deep run in the playoffs? I highly doubt it, unless Arch Manning truly elevates to the level where his hype was. Because his hype, and we talked about it during the offseason, excited as we were about Arch, and as good as we projected him to do this year, we said that we thought he would have struggles early. We said that we thought the hype was way too much because even though he's the third year in the program, that doesn't mean anything. When you're a first-year starter, some guys acclimate immediately, typically when they have really good help around them, and some guys it takes a little time. Arch is going to take a little time, and he has already shown improvement. Arch to me is just the least of the concerns when it comes to the offense. Is there concerns with his play? Is there things he needs to get better at? Yes. Do I think he's going to improve? I mean, he delivered some great throws in that game Saturday, and all of them were under duress. He had linemen grading out as a 0 in pass protection.
Yeah. And I want to end this conversation off with this is, if you're the type of fan that strictly resorts to blaming quarterback or coach, if after every loss you just happen to resort to, well, the game plan sucked, the coaching sucked, the play calling sucked, the quarterback play sucked, and you're not putting any of the blame on anybody else, you probably need to reevaluate how you're watching the game, or just probably need to study up on how the game is actually played in general, because I just won't have that conversation anymore unless it's truly the quarterback's fault, unless it's actually just bad quarterback play.
Yeah, unless it's DJ Lagway against LSU where he throws 5 picks.
Right. Unless it's just actually bad quarterback play, or the coach is just really bad.
Or Arch in the Ohio State game, you and I both put that game, majority of it, on Arch. Because it was.
It doesn't take 5 interceptions to have a bad performance from a quarterback, but it also takes an entire team to fail a quarterback. If the quarterback plays decent to above average or really good, the team can fail him and make him look really bad at the same time. And so I just won't have that conversation. If you're the type of person that literally just puts blame on the head coach or the quarterback, no matter what the circumstance is, you're probably not watching football correctly, because very few times is it just solely the coach, or is it just solely the quarterback, or is it just solely those two things combined? Because there was a lot wrong. No, like Jake said, no one has talked about how bad the defense was. Nobody. And that's crazy to me, because I thought that was my biggest concern after that game. My biggest takeaway not only was the linemen, but we knew the linemen sucked before that game. We knew the offensive line sucked. The defense, no. That's where my eyes got real wide, and I was like, uh-oh, this could be a really long season if the defense plays like this the rest of the year. The offensive line, I knew that the offensive line was. We knew that after UTEP and San Jose State, we knew what the offensive line was. The defense, though, that's the conversation. That's where the New York Times needs to write, well, what happened to the Texas defense against Florida? That's what the headline needs to be, not about Arch, because that's just clickbait. You're just looking for attention at that point.
Yeah, and it's poor clickbait. It's bad taste.
Bad
clickbait. I mean, when you have OU and A&M fans, and I've seen both, and I've seen ones that have talked trash on Arch, but are stepping in and being like, okay, it's one thing for us as like fans of rivals to talk trash and do our trolling job. That's one thing. And it actually made me respect the people who did that, but they're like, this is the New York Times having this posted. I mean, that's just a different level of ridiculousness, and they should lose another defamation case, because that's what the New York Times does best.
Yeah. But, hey, let's hear from Underdog. Let's talk about some entries that we like, and then when we continue on this conversation, we're actually going to discuss about what Steve Sarkisian said about, not the New York Times post. I'm sure he has some choice words that he won't say publicly, but I'm sure he's talked about it. I'm sure the team knows about it by now. But we'll talk about what he said following the Florida game and what hopes to change going into OU week. Football is back, and Underdog is the best place to make picks and win money all season long. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just pick whether your favorite players will go higher or lower on stats like touchdowns, receiving yards, interceptions, and more. Get your picks right, and you could win up to 5,000 times your cash. You can play with as little as $1. Download the app today and sign up with promo code HORNS to score $50 in bonus funds when you play your first $5. That's promo code HORNS. Millions of fans have already won billions making picks on Underdog. Will you be next? Underdog, make picks, win money. All right, Jake, the game that I'm looking at currently is the Thursday night football game, Philly and Giants. I have yet to actually place this yet. I'm kind of still waiting on lines to possibly change because I don't necessarily love it. I do think that the Eagles are obviously going to win outright. There's no chance that they lose back-to-back games, but they are currently 7.5-point favorites on the team picks. I'm thinking that Philly's going to cover that 7.5-point spread. I know it's a division game. I know it's on the road. Them coming off of a loss, I think this is a good get-right game for Philly. And then in terms of player high or lowers, I like I just had it here. I like Scadaboo to higher than half a touchdown, so him getting into the end zone. And then Saquon Barkley dealing with a little bit of a nagging hamstring injury. He's or some I think it was some tightness or soreness, whatever verbiage they used. But I'm actually going to go lower than 85.5 rushing yards. I think that New York Giants front is actually a pretty good front seven. I think he might find some difficulty, especially if he's a little hampered with an injury. So lower on Saquon Barkley's rush total and then higher on the Cam Scadaboo touchdown.
Yeah, I also like the touchdown line for Cam Scadaboo. Kind of not really touching much else in that game just because it just kind of concerns me.
I don't like any of the passing numbers.
I don't like any of the passing numbers. And I'm not going to say, Jalen Hurts of all people is going to go higher on, because for them to win, he needs to throw for 110 yards. Because if they throw the ball a lot,
apparently he needs to throw lower than 40 times because that will also result in a loss.
Yeah, but I like the Colts and Arizona game. I like Daniel Jones to go higher than 1.5 passing touchdowns. Is another one that I'm looking at, and then in Dallas, Carolina. I like Dak Prescott to go higher than 1.5 passing touchdowns. I think with the way that offense is playing, I will take that a lot of weeks with the level that Dak Prescott is playing right now.
Also, you could throw in a George Pickens touchdown or Javonte Williams touchdown. Those guys seem to be finding the end zone on a fairly regular basis.
Ferguson found the end zone a couple times last week. He leads all tight ends with 41 catches. The next closest is 29. Thank you for trading him to me, Tanner.
Yeah,
it's been great.
You're welcome for that. I got Cortland Sutton out of you, and so he's actually been pretty decent for me. So
I actually think that's one that truly worked out for both sides.
It's a pretty fair trade. Yeah. So I will accept your thanks, and I will return the favor and another thank you. All right. Well, that is our entries for Underdog. And when we come back from the disclaimer, we're going to discuss what Steve Sarkisian had to say about the Florida performance and moving on to Oklahoma. Must be 18 and up, 19 and up in Alabama, Nebraska, 19 and up, and in Colorado for some games, 21 and up in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia, and must be present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In New York, call the 24/7 HOPE line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. That's 467-369. So, Jake, I also want to wish everybody a happy NHL season with Underdog. All the NHL entries are now available. I've had NHL on my television on this Tuesday night. We are recording this Wednesday episode since about 4:00 in the afternoon, and it has stayed on there since that time frame. So, big NHL guys. We won't talk a ton of NHL on this channel, but if you ever want to reach out to us and talk a little NHL, we will be happy to do so. I'm trying to grow the game, spread the love.
Stars playoffs. When it gets to playoff time, assuming the Stars are in it, that will get talked about. Similar to last year. Pretty sure we brought it up on this podcast a handful of times.
Absolutely, we will. Okay. Anyway, hey, all right. Steve Sarkisian essentially started his press conference, Jake, after the Florida game and kind of going into the OU week, talking about the line of scrimmage. And I think my biggest takeaway throughout the entire thing was he couldn't drop the line of scrimmage talk. No matter what people asked about Arch, no matter what they asked about the passing game, if they asked about wide receivers, they asked about whatever they asked about, it always came back to the line of scrimmage, whether that be on the offensive side or the defensive side. On both sides of the ball, we struggled. And I really think that it is a challenge to not only Kyle Flood, but Kenny Baker. That's a name that we have not mentioned who should have a little bit of blame in this game because the defensive line got destroyed. Now, we mentioned PK, but I do think Kenny Baker, the defensive line coach, his name's got to be in those team meetings. And I think there's been a challenge, a call to action for Kyle Flood and for Kenny Baker to step up and establish a bigger physicality and a more of a dominance on that front line, especially going into Oklahoma. I mean, you lose the line of scrimmage in this game, you may not score a point.
Yeah, I think the Kyle Flood and the offensive line talk is self-explanatory. So I'm going to spend a second to talk about the defensive line because I've rewatched this game 2 times since we last recorded.
I'm sorry about your eyes, by the way.
Yeah, I like to just whip myself, essentially.
Glutton for punishment.
Yeah, just love the punishment. But after watching, they are rotating too much up front. Why is Zena, Yumiazelu, or however you say it, and Lance Jackson, a true freshman, getting playing time in the first drive? Why is Colin Simmons not on the field more? I think part of the reason he's not having as much of an impact is because he's not on the field enough. Why is Cole Brevard not playing a ton in that game? He should be leading your defensive tackles in that type of game. He's the exact type of guy you need who's going to shove and stop the middle because the defensive tackles were getting pushed back, and that hurt the linebackers. I actually thought Anthony Hill had a really good game going back and rewatching. I thought Jelani McDonald had a pretty solid game outside. Everyone's going to remember the one play, but as a full game, he actually played pretty well. And I was actually surprised. Michael Taff had a really bad first couple drives, and then he played a pretty good football game. Everyone's going to remember the couple bad plays, but he actually, and that's why he graded out as one of the top defenders. But the defensive line just got whipped. And I think part of that is they are expanding this rotation, especially at edge, way too much. Ethan Burke hardly played.
And he's a great run stopper.
Yeah, and Trey Moore was not having a good game. That was his worst game I've seen as a Longhorn, not even close. He should have been taken off the field. At that point, it's just, you don't have it today. You're still a big player for us in the future. We're going to play bigger guys. And Ethan Burke should have been out there a ton. And I put that on Kenny Baker, and I put that on PK. They need to tighten the rotation for OU based off what's working. I will say OU's offensive line is not near as good as Florida's on paper or on film. And so I expect Texas to come out and play better defensively in this game because they should. Because OU, I realize Florida's offensive numbers were really bad going into that game, but Florida has more talent on the offense than OU does. Just straight up, they do. But yeah, I want to see. That's just one thing specifically that stood out to me was you're rotating too much. Yeah, especially at the edge positions where you have some elite talent. I'm sorry, I love Lance Jackson. I think he's going to be a first-round draft pick when he leaves Texas. He's not there yet. He's not Colin Simmons last year. Ethan Burke should be on the field a lot, especially in a game like Florida where they're running it down your throat and the edges were struggling to set the edge, not allow the plays where Texas or where Florida did go outside of the tackle that all seemed to work really well. So yeah, I want to see a tighter rotation, and they better be. They are. Sarkisian made that obvious in the press conference, but they should be challenging them as men, just being tougher. They were not tough enough in that game because guess what? In the second half, outside of whenever it mattered most, which I guess was a deep passing play. It wasn't, but Florida did not have near as much success at the line of scrimmage in the second half because they bowed up after halftime, and it shouldn't have taken that. This defense took for granted how they had played last year and to this point, and they got their asses whipped by a team that should have never been able to do that to them, because 21 points should have been enough to win that game. And also, offensively, they should have scored 35, because that's what the scheme allowed, for a minimum of 35 points to be scored in that game, and they didn't capitalize on it. And that's where my frustration lies. I thought the defensive game plan was terrible. I thought the offensive execution was terrible, and that is a recipe for losing football. And if they play that this way Saturday, they're going to get their butts kicked by Oklahoma.
They're going to do. I mean, if they play that way throughout the season, if a lot doesn't change scheme wise defensively, like you said on the rotation, I'm glad you brought that up, Jake. I hadn't really gotten a chance to watch and review the film. Also, I don't love rewatching losses. I don't have to put myself through it, so typically I don't, unless I absolutely just want to go back and see something specific. But I'm glad you mentioned the rotation of the defensive line. That is one thing that I had noticed, even, and I thought it was more so, okay, cool. It's UTEP, it's San Jose State, it's Sam Houston State. Like, I get it. Okay, you're trying to rotate these guys in, keep them fresh, make sure they're not getting injured, yada, 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 this, that, and the other. But when you don't see Colin Simmons out on the field, or you don't see Colin Simmons out there making plays, make sure he's actually out there on the field to make plays before you start saying that he's not out there making an impact. But I noticed, a handful of times, guys getting off of piles, and one play I see Hero Canoe, the next play I see Travis Shaw, the next play I see Cole Bavard, the next play it's like not only does that, you don't have the right personnel out there to stop the run, you're also not letting guys get into a rhythm. You're just running them off, and they don't really get into the game. There's not really I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. There's not this kind of momentum for these guys to just continually get into the game. Sometimes you just got to give, one defensive line rotation an entire series on defense, and unless, they're getting driven back, they're getting tired, and you need to rotate because they're tired. But just to rotate just for the sake of rotating, I don't think is a recipe for success in the SEC.
No, it's not. And especially, we said Florida's offensive line was going to be talent-wise one of the better offensive lines. And we talked about, if they put it together, they're an offensive line that could win against the Texas front if they played really well and Texas's front didn't show up for the task. And that was exactly what happened. But also part of that was Lance Jackson doesn't need to be playing in the first possession.
No.
He bring him in the second half, or later in the first half, when legs are getting tired and you get someone fresh in. The early rotations especially don't make sense to me. And then also, you got to have a sense of flow. And this is something I think PK's done well in other years. And I don't know if it's just kind of some of this positional turnover at the coaching that isn't aligning with PK, and it's not meshing right. And same can go for the offensive side of the ball. But there doesn't seem to be a good grapple on adjusting in game with personnel, not scheme wise, because they stopped doing too high safety. They went to the one safety look, and then their corners were slipping all over the place, and were getting beat deep. But they did change that look. Like the in-game adjustments schematically, I was fine with, but the in-game adjustments from tightening up the rotation based off who was doing what well, or what Florida was doing it, because I guarantee you they weren't expecting Florida to come in and just hand it to Jaden Ball 9 times in the first possession after he touched the ball 12 times against LSU, which is coaching malpractice by Napier. Thanks for figuring it out against Texas. But Cole Brevard should have been playing a ton in that game to help. He's your best run-stopping D tackle, and he was played way too limitedly. The rotation up front is one of the biggest things I'm going to be looking for against OU. Their offensive line isn't as good, so you may be able to rotate more and it be a good thing. But if OU is doing something well, they need to adjust the personnel for that. It's one thing to adjust schematically for it, but Texas has enough diversity of personnel on the defensive side of the ball that there's just going to be some games where guys don't get to play as much, and you got to play a Brevard and a Hero Canoe more than you want. Than an Alex January is going to get in, and then there's going to be some games where Canoe maybe won't play as much or Brevard won't play as much based off what the other team is doing. I want to see that rotation tightened up, and it needs to be against OU because the backs are against the wall for Texas, and I'm curious to see how this team comes out and plays after getting punched in the mouth and beaten down in the swamp. Fighting back, they did show fight, which no one seems to care about. I still care about that. They didn't lay down and die.
No, yeah.
The effort was there.
Well, like I said, I mentioned it in yesterday's episode that I just was extremely impressed with Arch Manning's toughness. Just he didn't go down and quit. And after he got hit, after every single drop back, it felt like he just kept getting back up. And I feel like the team almost fed off of that, or at least the defense fed off of that. Of all right, if our quarterback's not quitting after taking this kind of beating, we got to show something here.
Yeah, and there is still a good culture in this program. They're not going to – you see it in the players' interviews right now. They're not hanging their head and just going, well, the season hasn't been – there's like, we got to get – like, we have to play better. And their focus is on OU. I wouldn't say excited because I'm nervous. I'm interested to see how this team comes out and plays against OU in the first half specifically. Do they come out with a different attitude than they've had so far this year? Because the attitude just hasn't felt right. The explosive plays on the defensive end haven't really been there outside of San Jose State, where they forced a bunch of turnovers in the first half. Just negative plays, generating big plays, and just kind of the energy level hasn't quite felt there defensively.
Texas had it on the first play of the game.
That's the most painful play to go back and look at, because if that, you feel like with Florida was at in their season,
it changes so much.
If that play, if they recover that fumble and then they go in and score a touchdown, because the red zone offense did look good for whatever that's worth against a pretty good defense. I loved the play calling by Sarkisian in the red zone. That game goes
it's a different game.
Differently.
It's a different game. If we recover that fumble and
the biggest what if of the Texas season so far, and very well could end up the biggest what if come the end of the season.
The moment that happened and then Florida goes down the field and scores, I'm just like, in my brain, I'm like, you got to recover that fumble. You got to recover that. And then I resorted back to it, just sitting on my couch alone, drinking by myself, watching that game in my misery. Probably 3 or 4 times, just thinking back of like, God, you got to get that fumble to start the game. It shifts so much more than I think people want to admit or even realize, and in my own opinion. So, Jake, anything else from the press conference? Like I said, everything that the questions that were asked to Sark, he always kind of led it back to the offense and defensive line and the line of scrimmage and getting beat there. So I'm pretty sure that's going to be the biggest point of emphasis preparing for OU, which it should be. And then just kind of outside noise stuff, which Jake and I, we hit on that to start the episode.
Yeah. And Sark did have one quote. Nope. Nobody is like, it's been the only quote people talked about. I think it's taken slightly out of context, but Sark had said something like take 135 FBS teams and have them play in the swamp and see what it looks like or whatever. He took accountability in the press conference. He blamed himself. He talked about the line of scrimmage. That one quote, yeah, I don't want him to say stuff like that, but you're just taking one small quote out of it, somewhat out of context, and just that's the only thing being talked about. Everything else he talked about in that press conference was exactly what you would want to hear in this situation.
There's a fine line, too, of, yes, you do need to take accountability, which, again, if you watch the entire press conference, he does right from the get-go. He puts a lot of it on himself. You also need to stick up for your team a little bit. Like, kind of need to defend your guys a little bit, whether that's coaching staff or players or whoever, and just stick up for the program in general. And if it is kind of a lousy excuse, well, it's a lousy excuse. We've seen coaches from across the country look a lot worse than Sarkisian did in this press conference. And so not a great year for coaches in the press conference game, by the way, Jake.
Yeah, no, a lot of big name coaches too. I mean, Brian Kelly, didn't
Dabo.
say anything near as bad as Brian Kelly or Dabo.
Yeah.
But
James
but yeah,
Franklin. James
I
Franklin
did
is
just
on the
want to
verge.
mention that because I feel like there'll be a comment saying, "Oh, you didn't mention this quote," and just going to mention it. I'm just not putting much stock into that when everything else he said was taking accountability himself and calling out the line of scrimmage.
It didn't even register in my brain that was a big issue. And again, I have to stay off the internet because I just can't.
Unfortunately, I was too online today. I gotta take a break because it's just a cesspool.
I can't deal with Texas fans right now.
The only thing that gave me hope today was seeing somehow on Red River Week, OU fans and A&M fans reacting to that article. It really did.
Yeah.
It was like, wow, even they are like, this is too much.
Yeah, no, it is. But I will say this much. They're not kids. They're not amateur athletes. They are professional athletes. But that article's a joke. This isn't. It absolutely is. It absolutely is. I wouldn't like that against a professional player, like an NFL player, to use synonymous with failure. That's like,
it'd be like writing that about Cam Ward right now.
Yeah, correct.
It's ridiculous. Not in year 4 if he's not playing well, then writing that art. That's one thing. There's a point where something like that could be warranted. And in college, like you said, they're getting paid now. So it's not the idea of the art. It's the idea of when they did it. After you sent me the meme, and I think you made it. It was just like the guy sitting on the couch getting shot. And then it's like, how could they do this? And it's like the media hyping up Arch all off season to way too dramatic of heights. And then shoot him and go, oh, wow, Arch sucks. Yeah. So you didn't live up to the hype. How could living up to the hype?
How could you not live up to the hype when the hype's not even over? It's not even come to fruition yet.
Let's let the storybook end on Arch's career first.
Well, here's this too, Jake. It's like when people are like, oh, I just can't get past the first 2 or 3 episodes of Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad. I just can't get past for the first couple episodes. That's because you haven't watched the whole thing yet. That's because you don't know how it ends. That's because
and you haven't given it a chance because you gave up. I had someone tell me like I got 30 minutes into episode 1 of Breaking Bad and I just wasn't loving it. And I'm like, you watched 30 minutes of a show that has like 100 hours and gave up? Like so your brain is just melted by TikTok. Got it.
Correct. Yeah, your attention span expands to about 30 seconds to a minute of attention grabbing nonsense.
But before we finish, because I know we got to wrap up, I did just want to mention Texas volleyball still on a roll. 7 straight sweeps, 4 of those against ranked teams. They are absolutely rolling and being disrespected in the polls because their resume is much better than Nebraska's, and they are not. They only have like a couple first place votes. They should probably be number 1, but hopefully they get a chance to prove that. This volleyball team is just absolutely cruising right now.
Women's basketball schedule got released today as well. So go take a look at their schedule. They have a couple of cool non-conference games. I think it was Duke in there. I think North Carolina may have been in there. I know those are more so prestigious on the men's side of things, but I think those were the biggest non-conference games if I recollect correctly. So anyway, women's basketball, volleyball, doing well. So, all right, Jake, let's go ahead and wrap up the show. Again, like, share, and subscribe. We appreciate you listening. Longer episodes this week. Lots to talk about with OU. Lots to talk about wrapping up Florida. I think this is probably going to put the bow on Florida, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. I think we're done with Florida talk. Officially going to close that chapter. It's officially OU week. It is at the time of recording, 9:18 p.m., and OU still sucks. As always, ladies and gentlemen, hook 'em.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.